the two days, the 2 days in Re'iyah.
I'd like you to explain
Okay,
that.
so
ahead,
I'm at the beginning.
Go ahead, Simon.
Remember that we're talking about here is the interface. The interface, no, it's the mamutza.
It's what it is.
The mutza between, and what he's explaining, Shein Ma. That's the central piece that we're addressing now. Remember the concept of Shein Ma, which is bittul. Remember, Ma is bittul chochma. Let me just sum it up.
Mm-hmm.
It's chochma. Ma is chochma. The Ma of koyach Ma. Ma is atzilus. Ma is bittul. Ma is the thing that distinguishes tikkun from toyu. Or in simple English, it's what distinguishes order and the kavana, tikkun olam, as they say, from chaos, the bittul. Where in toyu, the energy is very powerful, too powerful. As he said, the two problems, that the energy is too powerful, so it doesn't tolerate one another. That's one level of bittul missing. Ma is ban or sag in the names of Shemus. Remember, ban is rooted in sag, so just for the record. And on the other hand, the kelim of Tayur also altogether have no hashpah because there's no giving and taking. Tikkun repairs both these things, and the essence of tikkun is bittul, that it's bottle, it's committed to the cause. It will what's the word? It will not bypass, not overlook, forego its own interests for what the Eibishter wants. I mean, simple English. But to tell you the energy, its own interests are more important, even if it's holy interests. So that's Ma. So to explain Ma, went through the whole arichas of the whole length of discussions before about Ma being the bittul that goes back and forth. And then he went to start understanding the root of Ma and the root of Sag, or the root of Ban. Ban, remember, is Gematria Behim. Ma is Gematria Odom. So the root of Ban, which means the root of Toyu, they all originate in Ak, in Adam Kadmon, which is the primordial man. And specifically, Ban is rooted in the Sag of Ak. Sag is, as he said, connected to the Havolim, to the, what we call the cavities, the openings, whatever. The orifices, the cavities, and caverns of Ezen Chet and Peh, the ear, the nose and the mouth. Ma, on the other hand, is rooted in the metzach, the forehead. And to explain this, which is really, as he said, from Eitz Chaim and the Geras HaKedesh that he keeps on site, that he cites, this is really, I looked around, I think it's the only place that's such an elaboration that Pasha explains a piece in Eitz Chaim like this, and what it really is the difference between the forehead and the other parts of the head. So the basic explanation is
the forehead is basically the plumbing. It's just like the main part of the plumbing. It's not the difference between the rest.
Because sometimes it's the pony.
Well, basically, right, panim and metzach. Basically, chochmas adam ter panov, the light, the glow on the person's face, the aura, is the whole face. But the forehead is the primary. And the lashon Eitz Chaim is metzach. Metzach is forehead. So the root of ma is in the metzach. So to explain what this means, he goes into a whole discussion of. Let me just. I just want to say one thing, that the conclusion of this discussion is going to be that Shein Ma itself in Atzilus is also an interface. There's the reflection of Shein Ma. That is going to repair the eirus of Teyu, the fact that they don't tolerate one another, and the etzem of Shein Ma, the root of the Nak, is going to repair the kelim of Teyu. That's the conclusion of this discussion of Shein Ma. The Shein Ma itself is going to have two levels. That's going to be the end of the discussion. By the
way, in the parentheses, he brought the etzem kina Shein Ma.
Yeah, no, he said it already. He said it earlier. But
it's talking about the ayin. In the parentheses, it says "V'ayinu she'etzem ador mizbara nichol be'etzem kina Shein Ma."
Right. So the bottom line is that.
Want a drink? What do you
want? So that's really where he's going, because if you remember in the beginning of Reish Samach Gimel, where he started this whole discussion, he said the Kol Iyin HaTikun, both the Tikun of the Eris, the repair of the energy problem, and the repair of the Kelim problem, everything happens through Shein Ma HaChodosh. to the new Shema that comes from the Metzach. So he's going to explain that there's the new Shemas. He's going to talk about the reflection of it and the etzem of it. But before that, let's talk about the difference between. Remember, the whole discussion of Toyu and Tikkun for the Maimon that we learned, that all address the difference in Midrash Daim and how Toyu behaves in the Eris and the Kalim and so on. He's discussing it now really in its root. And this is also another pattern in Ayin Beis that you see. Whatever he discusses on one level, then he lifts it up to its root level and shows the same thing again, which does a few things. First of all, it's very thorough and shows you the big picture. Also, the interface becomes much more intricate, because on every level, the same two things exist. So Toyu and Tikkun in its root level is just, it's cryptic words. It's Sag and Ma rooted in Ak. That's the Kabbalah of it. What is it in Havana, in understanding? So he goes into the discussion. He doesn't discuss the nose and the mouth. I mean, mouth is speech. He discusses primarily the hevel of dibur. Yeah, speech. I'm sorry. Specifically this hevel of speech. He doesn't really go into the ears. You can say is also because it's hearing. Shmiyah. But he doesn't really talk about the nose. I don't think he gets to the I don't think he does.
No.
But bottom line is, he uses one as an example, which is both speaking and hearing, basically, that as an example of how sound works. So how does it work? So the point is that I want that the dibur, even though it's a gashmizdika sound and a breath that comes out of you, it carries within it a very primizdika, a very internal energy. And he gave all the examples of how speaking can affect somebody in love and davening and a few other things, in Torah and so on. On the other hand, Metzach, and this is the two things that are back and forth. On the other hand, in Metzach, it's deeper etzem, but it's ba'ifin dilug, which that means simply like this: its root is deeper. In other words, what the forehead reflects is a deeper level of the mashpia than what his voice reflects. However, it's not proportionate. It comes
it's not orderly.
It's not
orderly.
orderly.
Yet it's deeper.
No, right.
Why?
That's why I wouldn't say the word orderly. No, because orderly means
later,
Satan. Yeah.
Later it's
No.
The way it comes out, it comes way from the Bikiyah.
In other words, two things as he was speaking. Dibur itself, when you speak, it's geshem, but it's still subtle geshem. The metzach is made up of skin. It's actual skin and bone. So physically, it's not in the same. It's not proportionate to the glow that comes from outside. Nevertheless, it's still there. So in dibur, number one, the dibur itself is eider. It's more refined. And number two is that the fact of the matter is the depth, the etzem of what's reflected in the look and the view of the king. Let's say what the king, as he said, the impact that it has on his ministers, his look is much more powerful than the impact. But there'll be motion efforts; they'll give their lives just by seeing that face and the type of authority that glows out of the king's face. So there's more of that jump.
This is what comes out of the mouth is already refined or fixed tail.
I'm sorry?
Since it's sag and its tail comes from the orifices. So this is already refined, because you're saying.
Remember, hevel is not really orifices. Hevel, we determined, is also hevel means the breath. It's more of an open cavity. It's like but it's the same idea.
So you said it's from tail. It's tail, and it's much more orderly and. Seems like it's already refined tail.
There's no orderly here. We're talking here, first of all, we're not talking about tohu. No, we're talking about sag. In Ak. In Ak, there was no shvira sakela. Just remember that. It's the root. There's the root of everything going on in the higher world. So in Ak, there's really no kelim altogether. In Ak, we're talking about the names. Remember, these are names of God that are all Yud Kei Vav Kei in its root. So you're talking about two forces that will ultimately, one will become toyu, and that's where there'll be an imbalance. He's going to explain that. And one will become tikkun, where there'll be a balance.
Yeah, we learned Ak. It was a mamutza, and only because it touched the Pneumius of Kesser, Atik. It touched it. It went from basically Arik to Atik, and was able to touch Atik and therefore be touching the infinite That's what it was, and that's doesn't seem to make sense in this context.
Hold on a second. I'm not clear what you're saying.
We learned about
one second.
It's
Hold on.
and then
Hold on. Ak is a mamutza, as he explained, and we already discussed it several different ways. As a mamutza being as he said, it's more of a mamutza because it's klal to the prat. It's the big picture that includes the whole cosmic order, whole Seder Shlosh. So that already is a mamutza, an interface. That's one aspect. So it's not so much between, he said, not so much between the divine and the existence, between the infinite, between Ligvul and Gvul, between the infinite and the finite, but more within the finite itself. It's the interface between the blueprint and how it comes out in details. That was a general discussion. Later, he discussed also Ak also has, like right now, it also has another element to it, that is the mamutza, which is that it actually brings the divine into a shape that will become later Teyu and Tikkun. Now, then he went into
become later.
Yeah, Ak is a world of its own. There's no Teyu and Tikkun in Ak. There's nothing yet. It's the earliest. It's the first. It's the first shape and form after the Tzimtzum. The Kav becomes Ak. Ak is the entire picture of all of existence that will come. It has everything within it, but it's in a root form. It's like you think of it like a seed. It's a seed. In the seed, nothing plays itself out yet.
And Teyu itself
is a lower world. In Ak, there's no Kalim even. The energy is so powerful. There's no.
Teyu is a higher world than Tikkun, right?
So one second. Then Ak will be Akudim will come next. Akudim means 10 energy in one container. And then comes Nikudim, which is.
Boy.
Your coughs in this are going to be forever engraved. So now he takes us to the next level. That to explain the difference between these two sides of things, which is between the dibur, between the power that comes through speaking and the power that comes through the reflection of the metzach. He goes into speak about the difference between the power of in the keiches, in the faculties itself, the difference between seeing something, the difference between seeing something and the difference between speaking about something, and also the difference between seeing and hearing. So in chapter Reish, okay. So just 1 second. Let me just sum up the chapters. So in chapters, in the chapter Reish Samach Gimel 263, he began with that difference between Sagan and Ma. That one is rooted in the Hevolim of Eizn Chet and Peh, of the ear, mouth, nose, and mouth. The other one is rooted in the forehead. And began discussing the whole thing about the power of speaking and how that reaches very deep inside the soul. In chapter 264, he went into the difference that is also reflected in the forehead, and that's a whole different type of depth. What comes across in a person on the face of the person, on the forehead of the person. In chapter 265, he goes in the other side. That the metzach, the forehead, it reflects it in a form of, like what he calls dilig, it's a jump. It really means, Bikiyah. It breaks through, which we will discuss a little later more at length, but it's not like it's not as seamless. I don't know, he doesn't say anywhere not organized, that's why I don't like that word. He doesn't say that. He said, b'derech dilug. Dilug means to jump. What dilug means, that instead of going, let's say, from A to B, you go from A to Z, like an express. That's what dilug really means. In dibur, the intelligence flows. The dibur is intelligent. Mostly, when you look at the face, you're not comprehending the wisdom of the person who's glowing, but you sense something very profound. Right. It lifts you. When he speaks, you're hearing words. The words are.
Oira dibur fits in the oisis dibur.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
However, the glow just breaks out.
Right. It breaks through. But he calls it dilug. Dilug really means it's not from the same mahus. It's similar to sometimes what it says, let's say, when a teacher, through his mashal, through an example, you can get more depth than through his explanation. Because the strange example, which is like from a foreign thing, expresses something deep. Anyway, but now going back, so that's chapter 265. Okay. Then, 266, he talks about the difference, he sums up the difference between Dibur and this, that this one is more Gilui. By the Dibur, it's more revealed. By the Metzach, it's more Etzem. By the Dibur, it's more you can relate to it more, so to speak. And which is also the interface. A Metzach is essentially, you get more of an Etzem, but you get less of the Gilui. You don't have a Gilui. You can't say, I understand it. But there's something that happens to you that's deeper when you look at the face of the Melech, of the king, than when he just speaks. That's the Nukud. Now, in 267, he goes into discussing now the difference between Riyah and Shmiya, sight and sound. And a similar example, that seeing something is believing. That much as you hear it, even from a person you trust, it doesn't come to the depth of when you see it. But he's going to explain also the other side.
Even God himself.
Right.
Even God himself told Moshe he didn't believe until he saw it.
Yeah. And then he says there about the Chet HaEgel, right, example, that he had to see it. Now, then he goes into the whole thing, what in Aveda, what's Riyah, that when you contemplate on the two things, Yesh Ma'ayin, how the world is constantly being brought into existence, and the second thing and also the fact that the world continues to always perpetually Hasmodas pool that always continuously, perpetually is sustained. She says all that gives you a certain sense. He says clearly it's not Riyah the same way as we're seeing something. It's Riyah Sichlis. Because you're looking at the world, you can relate to it. Remember, it's not thinking of God beyond existence. It's understanding. And he gives the example with ourselves, Machshav and Dibur, that as much as you speak, the speaking is the Yesh and Ayin. What's Yesh, what's Ayin? That to the outside person, to the other person, when you speak, that is substance, and your thoughts are vague, and Ayin are like amorphous, or not non-existent, but invisible. But from your point of view, what you think is Yesh, is real, and what you speak is Ayin. So he's using examples to give, as he says at the end there, he says that all this is Riyah, it's not Riyah Chushis, it's not exact seeing, but it's Sarderach. It's not Veda.
They clearly said,
yeah.
You have to try to do it.
Yeah, right. Everyone on there ready.
You can't turn a Shmiya into Riyah.
Trying to picture God in front of you. It's just still
No, but you're speaking, that's not the way you should look at it. No. This is how you think of it. You stand by an ocean and you see the sea never stopping. You start saying, who's giving it this power? And so in a sense, you're seeing a physical manifestation of Keich Ein Sof, of this constant, infinite power. That's more thinking like it, or thinking of the miracle of health, thinking the miracle of your life.
So once you start
in other words,
talking Osius and Dibur so far away.
No, it's not Osius and Dibur, but it's a sense of seeing something. It's not just you heard a story from someone. Let's say you were living in the Gan Eden. You heard there's a story that there's a world that is a material world, but it continuously perpetuates itself. What he's trying to say is that you do get a sense of something that is like Sumar Menechem. You lift your eyes to heaven. You see who in Ru'u Mibara Ela. The word there is Ru'u, to see. So there's an element of sight. It's an Aveda. Think of it like this. Don't think of the word sight. Think of the word that it's more than hearing. It's a deeper samtus. It's a deeper resonance than just hearing the story. Like if someone told you that there was once a healthy person who breathed 1,000,000 times in his life and never stopped, and you needed to have all the mechanisms of this, yeah, it's a beautiful miracle. But if it happens to you, you see it every day in people, it's a deeper thing. In other words, we have something that we can look at, and not just be told that there was a God who took the Jews out of Mitzrayim.
You can always flash back to that point.
Yeah. So it's really more of a manifest. Just think of it two types of avodah. Avodah of, let's say, Reuven and Shimon. Avodah where you relate to something as if you see it.
That's why Chachma is at every level, because it's a sense of reading. At every level we learn way back. At every little level is.
You mean Chachma is supposed to be there?
Chachma.
Okay, that's the next chapter.
That's why we
Right,
need-
right.
That's the
we
next
learned
chapter.
it already.
Okay.
We learned it already.
Yeah, I'm just summing it up. 1 second.
Let's go.
So that's that. Now goes chapter 260. I'm summing up the chapter. Then we go through the chapter 268, and he explains what's again. You see here how the interface everywhere. Remember, Metzach, as we're going to see, is more divine and less us. Dibur is more us and less divine, less Etzer. So now the root of it is Chachma and Bina. So Chachma is Riyah, the root of Riyah is in Chachma, the root of Shmiyah is in Bina.
That's Samachtes.
That's Samaches.
Samachtes. Samachtes is between.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay. So to 268, let's just sum up that, and then we'll learn 269.
Okay.
Is that basically both Riyah and Shmiyah relate to something that is Dover Nivdal, as he calls it. What's a Dover Nivdal? It means similar to what we said before. It's something that is outside of the realm of pure spirit. You know, you're seeing a physical thing, you're hearing. But here too, there's a similar idea. When you hear something, you're hearing something more subtle, like the speech reflects something, is more subtle than the metz of the forehead. When you see it, you see the Geshem itself. He brings the two opinions, whether the eye releases energy and you see the thing in its place, as if you see it you see it in its place, or it's a reflection of the thing in your eye, like a mirror image, which means that it's not as physical. But either way, you are seeing a physical object. That's what he said.
Capturing.
Shmiya, in listening, you're hearing. Yes, you're hearing something that is. You're hearing physical sounds, but it's much more subtle. So it's very similar to the same thing. So Riyah takes more of the etzem, but you don't really. It's not really like when you see something. You may see something you don't understand. You can't hear something you don't understand. I mean, yeah, you could hear it technically, but it's not going to be absorbed.
Yeah, you have those pictures, you know.
So sometimes
the
Chassidus
ladder that
says,
never ends.
yeah, right.
They call it in Riyah and Ayin Shmiyah.
Right. In Chassidus, for example, sometimes the Rebbe brings this. Sometimes Riyah, you see the whole picture and then you break it into details. In Shmiyah, you build it from the details and you see until you get to see a bigger picture. So basically, it's a similar idea. You know, I'll read the Kitzur, so we'll just...
Metzach and Shmiyah, it's compared, you get
Yeah.
Metzach and Dibur?
That's what's going to be... Remember, Metzach is also sight. You see the forehead. In hearing the Melech speak or the teacher speak, it's not so relevant that you're seeing him, even though...
Or you're trying to say the Einayim are part of the Metzach?
Yeah, there is an element of that.
Maybe.
That's why yeah.
Maybe.
In that against a Kaddish, he says that what does he say? He says that
Come back. You were away, there was chaos. They thought Simon is coming Friday, then they thought it's coming Wednesday, then it's something. Chaos. Okay, bye.
If I'm bringing to my house, 10 o'clock you can come?
Simon, goodbye. It's Friday.
that's 10:30, not before 10:30.
Man, you just slip.
When I send it out Wednesday night, you test this one.
Okay, Riyah, Shmiyah, Medabrim Dvorim. I'm just reading the Kitzur of Reish Hamaches. In Riyah, Shmiyah, Mechaben Dvorim is Dolim Elav. Both seeing and hearing connect things that are separate from you. They're outside of you. So not inside the human system. You're seeing something outside of you. You're hearing something outside of you. Shari HaGeshem Hanifrid Mitztayir B'Meicha Ideh, meaning a physical entity that's outside, separate from you, apart from you, is being mitztayer, is being photographed essentially, or shaped within your mind through seeing. He brought two opinions. One, that there's a certain energy that releases from the eye and you see it as it's there. Or the other way around, that it's like taking a snapshot and you're seeing it in the eye. I explained in Avodah that's the difference in Birudishin and Birusheni, which means Birudishin, that you go to the thing itself to refine something, you go outside of yourself to refine it. So you're actually refining the material thing, but it's not on its highest elevation. Then comes the second stage where you elevate it. A classic example would be when you shecht an animal or something. You capture the animal and you shecht it. So that would be Birudishin. You make it ready to be eaten. Then when you put it in your mouth, It's very more refined in the first
But
place.
he's saying that both exist, or he's saying two opinions, but you just said
Two opinions in Riyah.
Two opinions in seeing.
No, I understand.
No,
Not
the
in
beer is
Two
basically
stages.
2 stages in
That's the two
refinement.
stages of Riyah.
That means that in other
But
words,
he said
there's
there are two
value in
stages
each of them.
What is he saying?
About seeing, he said there are 2 opinions, and Aveda, he says there's 2 stages.
Did Simon explain the two opinions in Riyah Begashmis?
No, because
I like that. That would be
No, I was wondering.
I don't know how it's. I honestly, I did not really study how it is in science, how they see it. But essentially, what he's really saying is one thing is that it's as if the eye is able to release a certain type of energy that goes to the thing and sees it.
goes there and
there.
bounces back.
Bounces back. You mentioned that.
It doesn't say bounces. It
But
doesn't say bounces.
in other words,
back.
the
That
eye
could be the
is
second stage.
what shot down one. In other words, the eye is releasing something.
It captures the
It's
image and
capturing it where it is.
that could be stage 1 and stage 2. He goes there and brings it back.
Before the stages, before he
But
says stages,
I know I'm
the second opinion is
20,
that
30
it's
years
taking a
ago,
snapshot, and it's really you're
40
seeing it
years
like
ago,
a
Hadar
It's
Torah.
you seeing it in
Yeah.
here.
Which 30 years
to,
ago.
to be like a
That
reflection.
you
Like he says,
remember.
it's like a reflection of mirror.
Riyah
Says it's
is
like a
only you
reflection.
going
which is
out.
really
That's
the
all he
way,
said. He never
the
said the
paradigm through which the world sees it today. That you're
Honestly, you
not
have to
seeing
really
your
see
mind
it.
is
No, but there are. It's not so simple. And even in science today, there's all kinds of discussion of exactly how sight works. Not so black. It's not so simple.
Like I always wondered, the Rebbe Hashem expected us to understand it, didn't he?
So I understand.
They were just smart on us and we're just stupid?
No, one second. Why are you saying that? I understand. What's the problem? There's 2 opinions of how you can explain the phenomenon of seeing something outside of you. Why is that a
You
problem?
telling me that the two
How
things
the-
are
how the
seeing
different
it
one
or I'm
is number
seeing
one.
an interpretation of it?
One
Would
is
that be an accurate way of
One
saying
is
it?
more like you're seeing a reflection in a mirror, which is your eye. And the other is actually you're seeing something as it is. And the eye is like, through the eye like light. It's shining a light on it. And I
The
guess
eye's going out to it. Which
it doesn't say
never
reflection, but
understand.
it probably means that you are, the eye is doing something that is allowing
Sending
your
out a
mind
ray.
to see it.
There's some sort of a ray coming out of your eye or your mind to the object.
That's what he says in the Tzutze, right? He says that. Now, again, it can explain it many ways. I mean, if you want to go more detail, it could be that your eye is releasing like energy. It's almost like, and it's bouncing off, and that's what you see, bounce off, which is not a snapshot. Remember, a picture is different than actually seeing something.
Because it's alive, it's moving.
Yeah, so you're really seeing it, which would be the geshem, and there's a power to be able to, or it's a snapshot. It's like a camera, and a camera, interesting, is ironically copying an eye. Okay, but a camera, everyone knows, is not an eye. A camera, it doesn't see as we see. The camera can't process a vision without taking a snapshot. So obviously we could. So I think that's the way. I mean, you can analyze it further. I'm not positive how to say. I know for sure in science today there's the concept that you can bounce, how they find out, for example, many shapes and things. You bounce light off things.
The second one,
Or you bounce energy, and you see the reaction. So there is the concept of bouncing energy. So he doesn't say the word bouncing is true, but maybe that's what it means. And should air go out and see, I see you have a different shape than he does.
Sure.
My light is telling me that. The eye's light is telling me. It's different than if it's like sending back something, image and a
Right.
snapshot.
Anyway,
That
you
would be
can see in your mind's eye, so to speak. Moshe Rabbi right now in Florida. You can picture him, you can see him, you can catch him. You can really do it.
That's a snapshot.
No, that's the opposite. That is going there.
No, I would say
You're not really seeing them.
No, but
you bring yourself to him.
I
I
wouldn't.
do it in remote healing all day.
No, but that's not what he's saying.
Golden simple terms of imagination.
Maybe, but it's more than
No, but it's not. It's not what
more
he's
than
saying.
that.
No,
I make physical changes on
Hey,
it.
my friend, it's exactly opposite of what he wants to say.
Wow.
He's not saying that because he wants to say that you actually see a physical thing, because that means you've translated a physical object into so-called digital mind. That's a different story.
Not if you really know you go there.
Well, something that's not what he talks about Riyah.
Okay.
Because let's put it this way: when Moshe Rabbeinu had to see something to believe it, it wasn't just why didn't he trust Hashem when he said it to him? He could have imagined that it happened. He had to see it first. Right, exactly.
In your life.
I would know his essence to be able to go to him.
Even without, because you heard him on the telephone?
Anyway, one second.
I'm trying
We're
to-
going off completely, in my opinion, going off.
I would never be able to. I can't do it now. I have my name.
But had you never met him,
We're gonna be at the four
possibility
Lucas.
of be able to
But they have
That's
It always bothers me.
Teisha, Megimel, Beis,
I have to understand my limit,
that's
but I
like maybe
know,
the
I
record
know,
inside the eye.
It
I
is.
see him, I can catch it.
But one second, let me just say, this is not what it says in Ayin Beis. Talking about something else completely. What you're saying is machshava, is imagination, is memory. You're not talking about real.
I can actually know the essence of the person.
Yeah, but that's not what the
I can't
Rebbe
do it
Rashab
from
is saying.
I can't do it from a picture.
But the Rebbe Rashab is not saying that. With all due respect, I think one could. It's because you saw.
I can't.
No, because you saw him physically. That's why.
Once
I
I
can't do
do
it from a picture.
I can't. Somebody give me a picture. I want you to check the photo. I can't do it.
Oh, if you never met him before.
That means he saw him begashmi. That's what it means. Okay, but bottom line is, the Riyah goes, and so no matter what opinion is, the point that Rabbi Rashab wants to make is that you go out to something that's outside of you. Even the opinion, the second opinion, that it's just a snapshot, it's still more geshem than when you hear something. You hear, it's an idea. That's the bottom line. So each one has an advantage over the other. Okay. That's Bir Rishon, Bir Sheni. So it's true. From the Aveda, you could say that it's two stages, that the two opinions outside both play a role. But he doesn't really say that. He just says
Rishon is you taking your Mevared the Ra out of the Toiv, or the Toiv out of the Ra.
in its place.
Simple speaking.
In its place.
You're taking the Toiv, you're
As
extracting
I said,
the Toiv.
you're going in, it's simple, you go out and hunt, or you go out and chop wood. Then you bring the wood into the house, and you cut it up in pieces and put it into the fire, so to
You
speak.
took it out of the Toiv out of the Ra didn't mean that you took the Toiv up to
separated it.
Exactly.
You separated it.
And then when you, let's say, take the food inside you and you eat it and break it down even further, it's much more refined. So each one has a
Oh,
mile.
I'll say it like this. You ate it b'kavana l'shem shemayim. You extracted the toiv out of it. You made a clear distinction of the toiv out of the ra. You then went ahead and used the koyach that you had from eating this to learn toiv and to daven. That thing that you extracted actually is under the lucas. Make sense?
I would say that may not be a Bir Sheni. What you said is a third step. The Bir Sheni is Bir Sheni is bitter still. Yeah, Nichla B'Lakus, I would say it more that even if you digested a piece of food that was once a raw, without cooking it, let's say, when you shechted an animal, the Bir Rishon would have been taking the kashmir, the animal, and making it aroi to Bir Sheni. Bir Sheni is when you salt it and whatever, and you cook it, and you eat it. So, and it could be that it's I'm not sure whether it's only the Aved of. The bottom line is, these are two stages. Etzem hadover hamizbarer nichel be'etzem b'china shema hamavarer. So the bottom line is that the physical thing, through sight, you actually take the physical thing and you elevate it through the sight inside, and that's the concept of shema. That's mavarer. Okay. Shemiya is when you hear it. Yeah.
Not that you see it, you're mavar. That you're saying it's compare. It's al derech to be rudim. You have two types of way of seeing something.
And the second part is similar to the way we hear and stuff like that. That's a similar type of a thing. It comes into you, right?
No. That's both in sight. There's two bitter is both in sight.
I understand.
Hearing is a different
but
thing.
The second one is similar to the way we take. We're taking in sound waves.
No, but he's saying the opposite. That in sight, even according to the second opinion, it's not like hearing. No, because you're still seeing a physical thing. It's still a physical image that is the root is what it's inside. What you see an image of that physical thing, whereas in hearing, there's no physical thing at all. It's more of a subtle.
Okay.
It's like three things.
You translate it.
And he said, "Lamaila, this is machshav demish lamata elo nechlet lamaila." That the one who shaped the ear, does he not hear? So you have to say that also the Eibishter has these two connections to us.
He might not choose to hear, and of course, if he wants, he can hear. Maybe he wants to hear. You never know what he wants.
It's 6 months since Shavuos, and I haven't seen too many articles from Rabbi Simon on Ayin Beis. I know that the first article I saw opened my eyes.
Well, if everybody would be doing other things, like recordings and other things, and I don't have to do that, then I would be able to have time to do the writing. So if you're going to dish it out, you should also... I thought this was a team. I thought this was a team.
He's writing other articles though.
Sure. So that he gets
Sounds
an
like a
open
meeting
hand on the
from.
back.
Actually, he was able to buy an algorithm.
Was the Rabbi when they had a meeting with Ayin Beis, you know? But not writing my mind.
Right.
Everybody else was doing it.
That's where I took what I just said from.
Yeah. I figured, you don't have your own svara since everything's else from them.
No, once in a while I heard no. So let's learn two.
You took the easy job, you gave us the hard job, and you expected that there should be an equal playing field.
Can you save it for Brady? Mine, Tutas Kislev. You have to have those little hot doggy thingies with mustard on the
That's
table.
the flesh. You
That's
get the
those little
That's
Franks.
the flesh, right?
And that's the house this one. Like
that bit of this and a bit of shame.
I'll let you know.
So that's rib steaks.
I think rib steaks is a good idea, yeah.
Remember, all this is being preserved
So it's
for
reserved.
eternity.
So we'll talk about it for Brady.
Posterity.
How's that?
It comes to opinions of the posterior. Either way, it's being preserved for posterity.
Okay.
Okay, so that's between seeing and hearing. Now I was going to explain the difference in the root of seeing and hearing. It's Chachma and Bina. So it says on page 269. So again, the point is that in seeing you see more of the essence of the thing, but it's less internalized and less gilui, less revealed. In hearing, you're getting a reflection of the thing, but it's more internalized and more revealed, more comprehended. Which is similar when you see, when you delight, when you see, it doesn't say that.
So we
What did you just say about seeing?
Say again, because when you see them,
When you see the etzem of the, you see an etzem of the
it's not
geshem,
internalized.
but it's not
Does it
internalized.
say that second part here? That it's not internalized?
Yeah. He says,
How would the etzem of anything be internalized? It's not a contradiction, but to have
if you have both,
the etzem,
well, that's the whole point. The ultimately, ultimate tachlis Hashem is that
etzem is
that's will be. But that's after the avodah. After the avodah of shmiyah, then you go back to Ri. You could have the combination.
Yeah, the effect that Ria has on you.
The same thing is the difference between when you look at the forehead of somebody. So it reveals a deeper part of the person's etzem, but it's not in any revealed way. You don't understand. It's not like there's no words coming out of him. When he speaks, you get a reflection of his etzem, not the essence of the person, but what you get is closer to you and more internalized. That's the bottom line, and that's of course going to be the root of Toyu and Tikkun. That Tikkun is more the second one that reaches the essence.
Your vein would look at your forehead and know all about you. That's true.
Or the other way around, you could look at their forehead and not necessarily know about you, but you see something. That's what he's talking the other way. You see the king.
It's not the other way, but I'm asking about that.
It's
a known thing, isn't it? The vein, or at least the Rebbe would look at the forehead.
They said tzaddikim in general they could see, but I don't know.
In the case of
I don't know.
Me, it didn't have to be the forehead.
No, but it says Yudiyas HaParzuf, the most it's Chachmas
Good,
HaParzuf.
when I'm defining
That's
what
fine.
he's seeing, I'm going to limit that he saw my forehead and he saw everything.
So
No, but it does say Chachmas HaParzuf. It's like there's looking at the hand, the palm, there's looking at the face. It does say clearly they look at the face. The answer is yes, the face reflects the inner, remember,
The face of the more than forehead.
He says both, the face in general, the forehead specifically. Remember, that's a cloud and everything, there's no black and white. The forehead is the main part of the face that reflects the main. When you say a person's chachmas adam teir panav, his face has a glow. The general face, but more specifically, the forehead is the primary part of where the glow is. And now, what I was going to say was that he said already that panim is pnimius. Did we learn that? Panim,
I think we did on that.
face also is pnimius.
I mean, we learned about the orifices as really pnimius before you.
But this is a deeper pnimius. We keep talking. Metzach reveals the deepest etzem of the person. Deeper. Yeah.
So it's not makiv. It's still
No,
more of a pnimius.
I don't recall using the
They'll
word.
say
I asked him pnimius. I
Oh, there you
assumed
go.
it's
Okay.
makiv.
What chapter is that?
That's Reis Amavot.
Okay, right. Okay, there you go. So here, the reason for this, the reason and the distinction, that both Riyah and Shmiyah, as he said, are tefus, grasp something outside of them. But in Riyah, it's more the geshem, and less processing. That's also a good word, I think, less processing. You don't process when you see something. And the hearing, it's not so the geshem, it's not so much the matter, but more processing. So the root of it is in Chochmah, because they rooted in Chochmah, Because the power of seeing comes from the power of Chachma and the power of hearing from Bina.
If by Shmiya you didn't process, you wouldn't really have anything to.
Nothing at all. Exactly.
Riyah, you'd go out before.
I mentioned before, the Rebbe often brings that Shmi also you build something detail by detail. You can't hear a whole story. You hear piece by piece by piece. The seeing is the opposite. You see the whole thing, and then later you break it down into pieces.
But we gave you an example the other day. You can see something, no idea what it is. Like
Exactly.
Something 100 years ago, would use a hand grenade, and he would just like it'd be a maze of colors and a little round thing,
right.
and everybody else from here would run away because they process it. So they don't process it. Seeing could be really nothing.
Seeing the thing itself, whether you understand it or not, whether you process it or not, you're seeing the same thing.
What's the meaning?
That's the point here.
If you don't know the hand grenade and take
it doesn't matter. But when you see something,
a
witness sees something, he can testify and put somebody to death based on what he saw. He didn't have to understand anything because he saw it. It's a reality. Seeing is a reality. That's undeniable.
The other people are running away because they saw once what this does. The difference between him is he saw the grenade plus what it does. Both Shmiya. Take two people who are equal footing. One sees a grenade, and one sees what a grenade can do, and one hears about what a grenade can do. And now compare the difference.
If you're asking, is it nothing to do with Ayin Beis? You're asking, what does it say in the Demish Shmir? They both have an advantage over the other. That's it. Seeing has, when you see something, there's a thing called seeing is believing. That's why the Rebbe brings this proof. An aid nasa dayan. Someone who witnessed a crime, or witnessed something cannot be a judge. Because once they saw, they're no longer objective.
So, okay.
When you say you see something, and you see it, you have the etzem. Define the word etzem. Is etzem like atzmus? Like I don't mean atzmus on hus, but I'm saying maybe it just means the metzius of the thing itself.
Exactly.
A lot of the information around it.
As usual, the answer has to be, you define etzem, and I'll tell you what it means. The difference like this: everything that exists has an etzem and giluim. This has nothing to do with atzmus.
Right.
Everything has etzem and giluim. Etzem, essentially, we use the word essence and we use the word expression. Let's say in a human being, etzem nefesh. I'm not talking about etzem nefesh now. I know, for me, essence works, but it doesn't have to be the word essence. The bottom line is, it's a part that's not expressible. That is like, let me say, let's say essence.
Essence is different than atmos.
It's rooted in atmos. Now, the atmos also has atmos and giluyim. Etzem is when you say, for example, like by the Eibush, you say, Anechi lo yisram es leibishum eis v'leibishum kates. It's not expressed in any name. When someone says, deepest love we have, let's say, to our children or something, even if it's not expressed, it's there. So really, etzem has to be understood in contrast. Things that are expressed are generally not in etzem. That's in general the rule.
You can use the word etzem and see.
You see, let's say, etzem kadur hashemesh, like he speaks in Shayechet Vamuna. So he speaks about the sun as it's in the sun. We only know about the sun because there's sunlight. So sunlight reveals to us things that are there. But there's things in the sun that we probably don't even know about. And, so there's always two things in everything. There's the thing and its reflection or its expression. It's not that complicated. Like this, even a wall, the etzem wall is here whether you know it or not, whether you saw it or not. Okay? So when you cease it, you're able to see something that's outside of you. Hearing, you can never hear the wall. Because the wall doesn't speak. You can only hear intelligence. So the fact is, seeing is able to process a whole part of the universe that God forbid, if we didn't have sight, the only thing you would really relate to is a certain subtle spirituality, or not spirituality, you'd only be able to hear sounds. The idea of seeing an object, seeing there's a tangible table, that's going to be very vital because that's what Atzilus does, that's the tikkun, that's the mimutza, the interface of taking a material thing and turning it into elikus. Like, what is someone that says the Alter Rebbe saw the Keich HaPel B'Nifel? He was able to look at a beam and see the divine energy within it. So you always think, so did he see the beam or did he see energy? Or did he see both? The answer ultimately is he saw both. It's not like, because the beam is not an illusion. Bereshis bara Elokim means the world is in existence. So the big problem becomes is how could a material being be divine? Divine is spirit, is energy. The answer really is, as going to say later, Atzmus is beyond energy, Eid Keli. But that's the issues of Eid and Keli. So in other words, so I'm saying if you want to really, you have to say this is not just an analysis of sight. It's coming to really understand how does it. That's why the Bir Rishon, Bir Sheni is so critical, because you're talking about how do you take a raw material world and turn it into Elokus. So Ziyah is an example. Ziyah, you're looking at something, but you're processing it. Is you're turning a physical thing into a spiritual energy. You know, it's very similar to what they say in computing today. When you type letters, there's no letters inside here. This is turning into electrical impulses, which will show an R or a D or an Aleph or a Beis on the screen. So you're really taking physical things and turning them into digital energy, essentially, and vice versa. You can take energy and turn it into matter. So science is a very good example today. This was once unheard of. Someone said, can I take a piece of wood, and turn it into energy? If you didn't know there was a thing with fire, you would say, hey, it's two separate worlds. This wood is the wood, and that's it. But now you take a piece of wood, you put it into fire, it's fuel. So you suddenly realize the wood has something in it that I didn't even realize. But that's still not the etzem. Etzem is when you see something, that's why you really need both in the ultimate story. You need, why I say Reinus and Nishma, by the Seres HaDibros. It says they saw the sounds and they heard the sights. That was an example of complete Akhdus, where everything becomes everything. But generally speaking, that's the Mailavi. So ultimately what he's going to be saying that Shem Ma'av Atzilus has the power to take the material world and turn it into Elokus. Toyu does not have that power. Toyu has the power in its holy state, in its before Shri Saket, has the power to relate to a more spiritual thing. It's very much like even in Far Eastern disciplines and so on, and many different spiritual disciplines, the only way to really transform is you have to get away from the material world. You can't stay in it and turn it into godliness. Only the concept when we don't say matan teira, that you could actually the bitla hagzera, that Elyenim came down tachtein, that even the others could not take physical existence and turn it into spiritual, except mitzvah of a bris, mitzvah mila, because the Eibishter gave the commandment. Others couldn't do that because it's a big thing. With all their spirituality, they had like Shia, not Riyah in a way, in that sense. And we could do it because of Matan Torah. You could take physical thing and make it a chefs of Kedusha. That's not a small achievement. Because remember, the Eibishter himself created this, the Rishus of Chayah. The Eibishter created the Geshem. How could you make from Geshem Ruach? That's why it says, Gedei L'Maisa, it says, Gedei L'Maisa Tzadikim L'Maisa Shemayim V'Aretz. Chassidus says, why? Because the Eibishter made from Yesh, Ayin Yesh, and they make from Yesh Ayin, which is much harder.
Could it go into it with the 7 mitzvahs?
Yeah, to some extent. The Goy does more like Bir Rishon, and the Jews do more Bir Sheni, if you want to put it in those areas, because they civilize the world. And then elevating it to the next level of, let's say, Sheva Kalam, and that's more of a Jews.
So seeing something physical, they're looking at a physical thing and getting into your brain. That's already a transformation.
It's an example. Obviously, it's not an Avodah because you didn't do anything.
No, but it's an example of taking something physical and turning it into a...
Yeah, it is exactly right.
Almost.
Yeah, but there you have more the etzem of the Geshem and less the Gilui. In Shemiya, when you hear something outside of you, you internalize it more.
Okay, both are examples of taking something physical and turning it into dust.
Because what you're seeing is too much to internalize.
That's one of the reasons, yeah. It's correct. It's already 8 o'clock, so what do? We read 2 lines. Huh?
Right?
What did you like to say?
No.
2 lines.
2 lines.
No, because we got into...
You were on the phone.
I'll read 2 more lines. V'nekeich habinu b'chinas is pashtus levad. Al Shem zanik lecheves hanor. The merchav hanor is pashtus levad. See, it's pashtus. Again, speaking of expression. Bina is only the spreading out, the expansion. The expansion alone. The Cheves Hanar, the river, is not the root of water, as I'm going to say in a moment. It takes the Mayan, the spring, and spreads it out. The Cheves Hanar, the spread, the width, the expanse, the breadth of the sea, of the river. The Mokem Amshachas Hamayan Hanayva Zeh Guf Etzem Hanar. There you go, Guf Etzem. You see Guf and Etzem. And it's pashtus. The source, the place where the Mayan is a spring, right? the root of where the water begins to flow, that the gufa etzem hanar. So let's say deep somewhere under the ground, there's there's drips coming out, or there's a flow. That's the etzem, the essence, and the guf, and the essence of the guf and the body of the river. Etzem hanar ve'ena misrachiv klal. I'm sorry, guf etzem hanar. That's the root and the etzem and essence of the river. Ve'ena b'merchiv klal. There's no spreading out. It could be a very
there's no pool of water.
Right. It could be a very it could be a very, very little trickle even. V'gam edecham shach ein etzem hanar.
Not only the breadth of the river, but the length of the river.
Right. Is also not the essence. Ki im emek nevias hamayim hein ikar meitz hamayim. The main source and the main essence of the water is the depth. So there's erech, rechev, and emek. So when you look at a river, there's the width, which is the main thing. Rechev, there's the expanse of it. There's the length, how far it goes, which is not as significant because you can have a river that doesn't go far. And then there's the emek, the depth. You go to the root of it, you dig where did the river start from, and that can be something that doesn't have any. It's not so glamorous. It doesn't have any expanse, not erech and not rechev. Mashenken rechev ein zeh she'etzem nimshach. I'm sorry, rak she'be'erech hu she'etzem nimshach ve'helech. I'm skipping along. U'mashenimshach be'erech hazeh gam ken rak hispashtus lo ye'etzem mamash. So even the length is also hispashtus. The only thing you can really say is the etzem is the emek, the depth. Lo ye'etzem. Rak she'be'erech hu she'etzem nimshach ve'helech. In the length of something, this is how it is in the spiritual side. In the length, you could say the etzem is extending itself. Basically, what it says in other places, it says like this: the emek is the essence of the thing, the root of it all. Then, the depth. Then it goes out like a line, like the kav, like a line. It's not yet a river. That line is an extension of the etzem, but it's not the etzem. And then that erech will spread out wide to the width, and that's even more ispashtus, even further from the etzem. So he's saying even the erech is also not the etzem. So basically, it starts with, it's like yud vav hey. Basically, I'm not using the hey. Yud is the chachma. Hey is it spreads out. Vav is it's like when you're being must be a seichel. Okay. And when the nor expands or widens to the sides, that's only an expression. It's not the thing itself. It's actually a beautiful way to think of it when you think of Shmiya. As I soon will explain it. Even the name Nod, where does the name river come from? V'nod alav means illuminate, right? V'nod, they shine. They rush.
You come to it.
They spread, in other words.
No,
I think they come to it.
They gravitate? Congregate?
Yeah. Not congregate, gravitate.
Gravitate.
Yes.
So v'nod they gravitate. So in other words, the name in Davar HaNimshach means something is drawn.
Like
something is drawn. It's almost like,
The name river in Hebrew, Nahar, is almost like a verb.
Yeah.
Nahar.
So it says, Davar HaNimshach u'mispashet. So Nod is not the thing itself. It's something that is spreading out and being transmitted. I mean, V'nod Alav is also, it's drawing them. Yeah, drawing. And that's the meaning of the expanses. Yeah. The Rebbe speaks, my Yemesecha is Chachma, and the Futsu is Bina, yeah. The Kamei Kain. So what did I do?
Up to you.
Kamei Kain Keyech HaBina. Now, same thing Keyech HaBina, it's like the Nod, is the Nod. Is the Nyoni who Asoga is a Rak Bechinas is Pashal Vat. That's the same thing with Bina. Bina is not the etzem, the essence of the seichel, of the idea. It's how it comes across. It's how it's expressed. It's how it expands. That's why the pleasure of understanding is in its expansion. The more that it expands, the more that it spreads out, the more pleasure you have. Whereas Chachma is Keyech Atzmi. Chachma is the opposite. There's no expansion. It's a spark. It's a point. So it's a Keyech Atzmi. It's like the depth and the point of the spring of water in its root, which is just the etzem, the essence of it.
That's the aha moment.
Yeah, the aha moment, or the moment when
that seems very pleasurable.
Only afterwards, when you develop.
Only afterwards, when you go through.
When it's developed. Yeah.
Well, he
No,
comes
the pleasure is more at the moment of the aha than that
Well,
development.
with the aha, you're not thinking about pleasure.
You're not thinking about it, but that's the closest to the time.
And we just heard that the timing comes in the Bina.
yeah, but remember we learned earlier. If you remember, he said timing is chokhmah. So chokhmah primis abba primis atik. So
Right. And he was seen.
The difference with
Right.
there's the etzem tainug and there's the pashtus of tainug.
In other words, that timing will have no sustenance if
Exactly.
you don't develop it into Bina.
Yeah. There's a moment of that. The bina is the
I want to
prolonged time.
I want to keep that timing. I don't want to lose it. The only way you
I
can
think of
keep
it like
that-
this: you discover something, you discover a spring of water. There's a certain pleasure, but the real pleasure is when you're able to tap into it and you can access it.
Okay.
With regards to Michael Gerber,
Well, that's where you were.
Okay. So I'm gonna go now.
You actually send regards to Semitic, so we see some regard.
I'm going to go a few more lines.
Then I'm going to send him.
What time is your minyan?
8.
Exactly 8.
I have to develop like leave here and be there at the same time. I haven't mastered it. We're gonna catch it on it.
Wednesday, Thursday.
I'll just stop here. We can stop here. I don't have to.
I only finished half of last Sunday.
Okay, so we meet beginning of 269, and we will stop here. So we'll continue next time.
I only had-
Where's this point in the